All right, let's dive right into a fascinating explainer about identity, power, and the ultimate consequences of both. I want to introduce you to Ben. Now, Ben is what you might call your classic underdog. He's a nerdy, quiet kid who just moved to a new city, joined a new school, and unfortunately for him, immediately became the primary target for a relentless bully. Every single day, Ben is humiliated and pushed around. His life feels completely hopeless. But then, his reality completely flips upside down. He unlocks this mysterious, impossible, identity-altering ability that changes absolutely everything. It really makes you wonder, right? What actually happens when the absolute weakest kid in school suddenly gets the power to become, well, literally anyone else? Just think about that for a second. We're starting with a hero who is entirely helpless. He has no physical strength, no social standing, and he's constantly living in fear. And then suddenly, he is handed this dangerous, almost limitless potential. It's the ultimate fantasy for anyone who has ever felt invisible. But handing limitless power to someone who feels entirely powerless, yeah, that comes with massive unintended consequences.
Section 1. The Bullied Shapeshifter.
Just look at the stark contrast between these two guys. On one hand, you've got Ben, nervous, quiet, constantly targeted, and on the other, Jason. He's aggressive, relentless, and goes totally out of his way to make Ben's life miserable. Well, one day, Ben actually tries to fight back and ends up knocking Jason down. Jason is furious. He rallies his friends, forcing Ben to hide in a bathroom stall. But when Jason rips that stall door open, Ben is just gone. In his place, a completely different student named Leonard. Ben didn't just escape, he transformed. And a month after this incident, Ben wakes up, looks in the mirror, and completely panics because he looks exactly like his classmate Kenny. Okay, so what exactly is happening here? Well, Ben has a shape-shifting mutation. We're not talking about some cheap magic trick or an optical illusion. This is the awe-inspiring biological ability to perfectly copy another person's face, their body, and even their voice. Wild, right? Ben actually learns about his mutant status from a mysterious girl named Carter, who he accidentally bumps into at a park while he's hiding out in Kenny's body. Astonishingly, Carter sees right through the disguise. She recognizes him as Ben immediately and explains that he's a mutant, that this perfect biological transformation is definitely going to happen again, and that he desperately needs to learn to control it. Now, what is absolutely fascinating here is how quickly a defensive tool turns into a totally offensive weapon. I mean, look at this list. He starts with Kenny, which to be fair was a total accident. Then he shifts into Owen just by feeling a bit of empathy. But very quickly he starts using it to actively manipulate the world around him. He shifts his voice to sound exactly like his stepdad just to trick the principal. He becomes Jason to try and frame his bully. He turns into a boy named Enzo to escape a mysterious apartment, into Leonard to secretly interview a detective, and he even turns into a girl named Max to get revenge on someone who is humiliating his stepsister. Notice that trajectory? He goes from simply hiding in a bathroom stall to actively interfering and manipulating the lives of everyone around him. And that brings us to a really crucial moral anchor for this whole explainer. When Ben actually proposes using his disguise as Jason to essentially frame his bully, his stepsister Max shuts it down immediately with this quote: "Using your powers to scare or hurt other kids is wrong, no matter the reason." Max essentially becomes Ben's conscience here. It's a vital lesson for anyone, really. Just because you can do something to level the playing field doesn't mean you should. Accountability still matters, especially because the threats they are about to face go way, way beyond high school bullies.
Section 2. The Storm and the Mutants.
Let's take a step back for a second and look at the overarching conflict here. So years ago, a teacher named Vivian Kennedy expelled this incredibly arrogant and dangerous mutant named Yates. 2 years ago, Yates sought his revenge, but instead of attacking Vivian directly, he targeted her daughter. And get this, her daughter happens to be Carter, the mysterious girl from the park. During this terrifying encounter, Carter unleashed a massive blast of energy. It actually stopped a raging storm and stripped Yates of his powers entirely. But the massive revelation for us, that devastating hurricane that nearly destroyed the city 2 years ago, yeah, it wasn't natural weather at all. It was a literal mutant battle. And the terrifying reality for Ben and his friends today is that Yates is back, and he wants to finish exactly what he started.
Section 3. Investigating the Past.
With this massive threat looming, Ben and Max totally pivot. They go from dealing with high school bullies to literally turning their bedrooms into a detective agency. They start by analyzing a viral video of that crazy storm from 2 years ago, and Max notices another woman in the footage besides Carter. Digging through old newspaper clippings, they identify her as Vivian Kennedy. Then, the pieces start terrifyingly falling into place. Vivian is Carter's mother, and she was the late wife of Detective Darren, a local cop who's actually been trying to look out for Ben. To get more info without blowing their cover, Ben transforms into his classmate Leonard to interview Detective Darren. Eventually, they connect with another mutant named Morgan, who confirms their absolute worst fear. Yates is hunting mutants again, and he's actively stealing their powers. The emotional toll of all this is just incredibly heavy. During their secret investigation, Detective Darren actually discovers Ben's secret. He realizes Ben is a mutant. But Darren doesn't get angry. He doesn't try to arrest him or anything. Instead, he makes this heartbreaking request. See, Darren hasn't seen Carter since the day of the storm 2 years ago, when she ran away to protect him. So he looks at Ben and literally begs him to transform into Carter. More than anything in the world, this grieving father just wants to see his missing daughter's face one more time. It's such a profound emotional moment that really proves Ben's powers can be used for deep human connection, not just tricks and deception. Section 4. The Return of Yates. Just think about where Ben started. You've got Jason, your mundane, everyday high school bully who, stuffs rotten eggs in lockers. And then you look at his new antagonist, Yates. We're talking about a supernatural killer, a power-stealing mutant who literally causes city-leveling hurricanes. Ben's problems have escalated from surviving fifth-period lunch to surviving an actual supervillain. So, that leaves us with a genuinely terrifying question. How on earth can Ben stop a villain who steals the powers of every single mutant he touches? I mean, let's be totally honest about the absurdity of this matchup. Ben barely knows how to control his own shifting, and now he is basically acting as live bait for a super predator. Carter reveals her grand plan. Because Ben is the only other shapeshifter she knows, she wants him to pretend to be her to draw Yates into a trap. And, understandably, Ben is completely terrified. Section 5. The Spring Dance Showdown. Well, before the trap can even be set, absolute chaos erupts. Yates literally ambushes Ben right in his own home, inside his photography studio. Yates easily overpowers him and knocks him unconscious. But Yates doesn't just beat Ben physically, he does something so brilliant and terrifying. He uses his own shifting abilities to steal Ben's exact appearance. Wearing Ben's face, committing literal supernatural identity theft, Yates casually strolls right into the school's spring dance, walking right past Ben's parents, entirely ready to hunt down the rest of the mutants in a crowded gym. So, when Ben finally wakes up and realizes what just happened, he rushes straight to the school. He knows he can't beat Yates in a fistfight, right? So he uses his brain. They pull off the ultimate distraction. Ben transforms into Carter, making Yates think he has finally cornered his primary target right in the middle of the dance. Meanwhile, Max throws on Ben's signature jacket and sprints through the gym. Yates is completely disoriented. He thinks he's fighting Carter right in front of him, but he also thinks he sees Ben running away out of the corners of his eye. This chaotic, totally brilliant team effort buys them the exact window of time they need. And while Yates is totally distracted by this trick, the real Carter strikes from the shadows. She touches Yates and uses her special inherited ability to completely strip him of his stolen powers. The aftermath? Highly satisfying. The stolen abilities are immediately returned to Morgan and the rest of the mutants. Yates is captured and finally brought to justice. And in this truly beautiful resolution, Detective Darren and Carter are finally reunited. She no longer has to hide from her own father. It really seems like the perfect, happy ending. Section 6. A shocking cliffhanger. So that night, the battle is won. The city is safe. Ben has gone from being this bullied, nervous kid into a literal hero. But, as Ben lays down to rest, recovering from the fight, something goes terrifyingly wrong with his own biology. A strange, violent electricity suddenly begins to surge through his entire body. He realizes, in an absolute panic, that something is deeply, fundamentally wrong with his powers. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought to wrap up this explainer. Did fighting Yates, a villain whose entire existence was based on stealing and corrupting mutant biology, somehow permanently corrupt Ben's own mutations? Has the very power that saved him from being bullied now become a fatal flaw inside his own body? It completely changes the way we look at his origin story for sure, and leaves us wondering exactly what Ben will have to become next in order to survive.